Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge.
ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
Ashen's the Ashen Forge.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How y'all doing?
Great.
It's another Sunday. Sunday actually after a big stream. So all kinds of stuff to talk about. A little bit of community drama too. I don't know if we'll get to it or not, but actually quite a bit happened over this weekend. So
Oh yeah. No,
Slow
actually,
down.
I don't.
Go ahead.
I'm not always as keyed into community drama and the sort. So please enlighten me. Give me a quick brief here.
I was going to say real quick, I slowed down on playing Nightingale this weekend, but I did spend, I think when I woke up this morning, I was dreaming about putting a bunch of stuff on just gathering resources for Neuro, because that's what I did the night before, and kind of filled his place up with a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I did get some sleep. I was not up too late, so I'm not as sleepy as I was the last month or so on Sundays. But what was the drama? Drama.
I mean, just your typical stuff. Actually, a lot of it centered. There were two things that kind of came up. One was a massively OP article, which I don't think anybody would have noticed except for Steven responding to the tweet that announced it. The person that wrote it apparently, I should have got all of this ready, but I did not add any of this to our overlay. That wrote it apparently just is forever calling Ashes of Creation a Gank Box, and just very pretty clearly like makes no attempt to hide their disdain for the for the game. But they referred to him. One, it just didn't make sense. Actually, the article. Actually, I can probably link it to you all in chat here in a minute. But they called Steve. What did they call him? Basically some kind of dog. I don't remember what it was. So actually, did they take it down?
One thing while you're
No,
looking for that,
the human equivalent of an excited Pomeranian.
I was going to say one of the interesting things to me is that every once in a while we still get stuff saying that Ashes of Creation is a scam, but they keep iterating on the game, and they change stuff. Like for instance, that big hammer strike that is now called Cataclysm, I believe. They changed the graphics of it. So they are making changes to the game based on feedback, which doesn't seem super scammery to me, but this would be one of those things too. Of course, Steven is going to be excited about progress on the game that he's making.
If you weren't following, you should be now. And
It's
we thank you for joining us.
And the extent to which I will say there's anything remotely close to what somebody might call a scam is simply the combination of FOMO with the various starter packs and such corresponding with the lack of knowledge of what you're getting with all of these assets, how all the attire is going to look on everybody, what all the buildings are going to look like with all the various different influences in the area, all of that sort of stuff. We don't know, or like the footprint of those things, the actual size and overall layout and utility of each of the boats isn't something we're going to know until somebody start slapping skins on their boats, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, this one's a lot easier to defend because it's designed this, and this way. Like, this is, you could have only got it one time, but this is actually, low key best boat ever. That sort of stuff may actually emerge.
Yeah.
But aside from all of that, that's the closest thing I can think of to something that hasn't been represented accurately aside from the original Kickstarter release date, which, if you ever believe an original Kickstarter release date, hi, welcome to Kickstarter. That's not how things usually go. And if somebody actually does deliver a product in tune and on time, keep an eye out for them in future productions, because they're raring to go. Either that, or they already had it ready and they just did a round of funding to try to get a little extra cash in their pockets. Whatever.
Fans and followers of the Gank Box. Wow.
The Gank Box.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's there are games that I've seen that are definitely Gank Boxes. I feel like there's going to be a lot of tuning going on during Alpha 2 and Beta 1 and Beta 2 to continue homing in and refining what are PvE players okay with and what do they want, what are PvP players asking for, what do they want, and continuing to kind of push and pull with the metrics and the values and the punishments and all of that sort of stuff to make sure there's the right amount of penalty for hitting players that really don't want to be hit and killed. But if they're not flagging for it explicitly, but likewise giving enough room for people who want to just open flag and hang out like that to have it be incentivized and not just be like, well, why would you flag? That's dumb. So I can see how they would potentially be able to use all of that time and all the different waves of people coming in to tune it to the point where, yeah, you might get ganked. If you piss somebody off, you might get ganked a few times. Your caravans might get shut down. But by and large, that's going to be happening to everybody at, I would imagine getting killed by other players and stuff at about the same rate if they're not looking to get killed versus if they're, volunteering for the chance to die in combat as a flag player, going into combat in an open field area where they're trying to fight over an open world boss or something in a dungeon. All of that sort of stuff. That's, people are going to be putting a bit of the risk on the table to try to hang in there, and it's gonna be interesting to see how all that shapes out. But I think by the end of it, I think by launch time, enough testing and voices from each sides as the bigger and bigger communities come in and play and see how it is, will get it to a point where it will be a lot better for approximately everyone. Diggs, I know you're still not gonna, want to play a fighting character. You're just gonna be Mr. Travels with Rags. But I think you might be able to have incentive for at least your alt to try to put some effort into progress.
No. But I wonder what I was considering a Gank Box back when Steven was first on our show, because I think I did ask him what he considers a Gank Box. Now, I think that I typically don't think of Ashes necessarily as a Gank Box yet, maybe one step down from a Gank Box. And I think the games that would fall into that category for me are Shadow, and just Shadowbane, and maybe UO. Um, and then maybe I think of Arcade and Eve as a step below those two. Um, but yeah, I wonder what MMORPGs fall under the category of Gank Box.
Certain
It's a
eras in
subjective
Eve were
thing.
kind of that way.
I'm just wondering, right? I mean, if we're going to use the term, I wonder what MMORPGs those are, and then we could
Yeah.
see how relative. But I
You'd have
think
to ask the dude that
Shadowbane
wrote the
for me
article.
right. Shadowbane for me. I think UO maybe for me, and I think Arcade and Eve are one step below that, and maybe that means Lineage 2 is a step below that to me too. But I haven't been thinking, even though it's too much PvP for me, I don't know that I've quite been thinking of it as a gank box necessarily. But I'll have to see what I used to think of Eve and Arcade back when Steven was first done.
For me, it's kind of any game where there's a PvP server and a PvE server. If you choose a PvP type server, you're essentially volunteering to join a gank box of sorts.
Well, then that would be Ashes.
Well, no, because there isn't a choice. And I'm
That's
saying
my
where
point. You're basically playing on a PvP server.
Anyways, not to continuously talk about PvE versus PvP. That is not the show. We plan to do that, at least when it
probably
comes to
next week that'd
servers.
be a good one.
Yes, this we have the fighter and other things. Although, and I say this very hesitantly because I really don't want to continue to hijack this conversation. There were two actual things. One that was, well, neither are really new that came up during this stream related to that. One was originally the very first question, and I about a player death, and I did not realize, and this is my own stupidity, but I thought I'll put it out there because maybe there are more people like me. I did not realize that stat dampening, the length of time that you have that, is directly related to the experience stat. So I guess it never clicked in my head that you did not lose your stat dampening until you actually worked off your experience stat from your death, which is probably obviously the best way to go about it rather than a timer. So you can't just log off or whatever in a timer system. I did not realize that. The other was this was the first time, and it was in response to a question where they came right out and said there will not be PvE servers and PvP servers.
But
There will
that's not true. That's not true. They
they
said it like they hadn't said it before, but they said it early on. They
just
had
said.
Jeffrey and I know, but Jeffrey and Steven said that way early on. It might have been before Margaret's time, so she doesn't remember them saying that.
Mhm.
But they said that early on, right in the Kickstarter
Yeah,
days.
the seas is where it's going to be the Wild West. That is probably really true. I don't know how many people realize this. I posted this in our Discord today, and actually a different Discord as well. With regards to the oceans and ship combat and things. Steven, of course, his guild in Arcade was the White Order. Actually, they played in several. Um, he was the head of their navy, so he led the navy in his guild. So that gives you, I think, a little bit of an idea with regard to open seas and kind of the intent there. Um, before we continue even further, because I'm going to have to be very curious or be careful with myself here. For those of you who are not aware, and thanks for everyone that's joined us for the first time, but on Monday, officially, no, not, yes, Monday. It was Tuesday when everything sort of happened. Monday, decided to actually become part of PI or Phoenix Initiative. So I have to be very careful now about what I say, and I'm very cognizant of that. I also have to be very careful about like questions I ask and things like that because I don't want people to start like, why is he asking that question? Does that mean X, Y, or Z? So I have to be very careful, and if I'm a little bit different because of that, that's why. The reasons behind that, I think a lot of people said, why now? Why now? Why did you wait? I waited so long, honestly, because I didn't want to affect our show. The more I thought about it, as I think we'll be fine, but also we're not far away from Alpha 2. So it's this weird
Oh,
period will not be very far. So,
that's some PI knowledge there. No, I'm kidding.
no, that is public knowledge.
I
And if you keep
I
trying to
know,
get
I
my
know.
ass in trouble, Diggs, we're going to have a fight. You're doing this in Discord too. Um, so, so yeah, so that is, I have to be, if I'm a little bit quiet, I'm just like processing through what I can say or can't say. So, yeah, that being said, also, I want to point out, Ashes of Relation, Dr. Burns. If you don't follow his YouTube channel, you should. He puts out the bespoke series. I actually retweeted it or tweeted it out on our Twitter, and posted it in our Discord as well. I did guest with. I joined him and I think 5 other creators for a series of questions that he asked. That was all before PI. So I want to make that very clear. I did that with him before I ever joined PI, so there is no like inside knowledge or anything like that with related to those. That made me very nervous when I joined PI. I was like, hey guys, just want you to know I did this like weeks ago. So when it comes out, I had absolutely no knowledge of PI. So anyways, go check it out. It's he's a lot of fun.
That seemed like it was kind of like a part 1 to part 2. So, did
There's a
he
whole
ask you
series.
about guild? Yeah, did he ask you about guild stuff?
I am not going to answer any more questions about any of those things. So
Oh,
yes, I will say there is, I think, 10 questions. It's the same model. He did this. This is kind of season 2. Um,
yeah, but
uh,
it seemed like there was a little preview, and I saw you on
yeah,
every.
he breaks each question into its own episode. So there will be
Okay.
several more
Hmm.
episodes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but yeah, just want to mention all that as we get going. So that being said, we all want to talk about. We have the fighter.
Yeah, the fighter is kind of an interesting sort of thing. We saw a Renkai fighter, which once they put all the armor on, it's like, okay, bigger, beefier humanoid form. Hey. So it's nice to see a bit of variation. I'd love to see what that armor looks like on all the other race types, male and female, that they have, to kind of see where the variation is from one to the next.
I think one thing I wanted to mention that I had kind of forgotten to mention last week is that I was really hoping we could see the Dunir as our fighter, because that's been revamped and we haven't seen the Dunir since in game. We haven't seen the Dunir revamped in game since what, 2021, I guess. So it's going to be 3 years, I think, since we've seen the Dunir model in game compared to other races. And right after Alpha 1, there was a couple of forum posts about how the Dunir is too small, it's too tiny, it looks like a halfling or a gnome, and not dwarves don't flip, so that's a problem. And they really wanted the Dunir to be bigger and beefier. And I was saying that it can't be too much bigger or beefier. If they go too far, if they do too much, you can expect some delays. And everybody did the usual digs. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Shut up. And I was like, I mean, it's going to be more than just little sliders. So if they do make it much bigger and beefier, expect a delay. I was not expecting 3 years. I would love to see, they have changed it. I would love to get a comparison for how much bigger the Dunir is compared to others, and it would have been nice to see that as a fighter. But we got the Renkai, and we have not seen the Renkai at all in game. What did you guys think of the Renkai?
Well, because we only saw the head and not really much of the rest of the body, it's it's an orc head.
I
And how about
mean,
uh
I was gonna say, I mean, come, you have a general body there. You have the size.
yeah, I was gonna say, in comparison to the other models, how was it? I mean, it looks like an orc.
It was
Yeah,
a cool set of armor.
yeah. The armor
Mm.
looked really good. Yeah, I will say that the armor looked really good, especially when he actually did put on the helmet. Most of the time that
Mm.
was off, but wanting to showcase your Renkai, you're gonna probably not want to keep the head covered the entire time. So, I think it looked good. When you go back to the idea of what we have seen already with the um, character creator and the ability to adjust things quite dramatically. I imagine you're going to get to make that any way you can think of. I felt like the size was right too.
I was a little bit surprised that they went with Renkai for fighter because I tend to think of Renkai more as tank. And even in this armor, to me, it looks more like a tank. And I kind of think of as a fighter as something sleeker, closer to a swashbuckler. Um, I almost would have thought it cooler to see a Vec as a fighter. Um, but I usually think of fighter as like a elf or something sleeker, a sleek human, um, rather than an orc. But I would have thought this would be
Well, then what do you think of the
what
two-hander?
we'd see for the tick.
What would you call a two-hander? Big old greatsword then.
So that's interesting. Well, Renkai, more like a berserker, yeah, but I still would think Kieran is saying that. So I still would think of a berserker as a tank. I tend to think of fighter as something again like a swashbuckler that's more suave than a tank. Um, but I mean, any race can be any class, so or any archetype, so you know.
Yeah, I mean, a fighter can manifest itself in various different ways.
All of the
It,
archetypes can, but this has a specific blood uh blood path. So Berserker would fit that really well. I mean, I was not expecting this blood path in the fighter kit. But there it is. So yeah, that would definitely fit in a Renkai.
yeah, that that makes sense.
Yeah, tons of
I
blood. That I'll say real quick while you mentioned that was quite a lot actually. Um, I think more than some
Hmm.
people probably would have expected.
I'm
Surprising.
saying. Hmm. And cool effects though. So again, I thought it was really interesting that what we saw demoed earlier was really more of a weapon demo, but they used the fighter to demo the great sword, I think. Um, and they had that giant hammer strike, and people were upset that that magical hammer strike did not look like the weapon that was being used. But each archetype tends to have one of those. Like the cleric has a whip that is a magical construct that does not match what weapon they're
castigation,
wielding.
right?
Castigation, yeah. And I think the tank has a javelin. But they did change it so it's more of like a thunder strike or earth eruption graphic instead of the hammer strike. I'm very curious though if the animations for things like I'm trying to remember the names of those. Mame was one. Um, and what's the cleave? There's something cleave. I'm wondering if those are going to match the weapon that you're wielding and go over top, or if, say, if you're using a dagger, it's still going to look like that's going to have the graphic of a sword. Um,
Yeah,
I'm curious to see how much it will change.
brutal
Yeah, I
cleave.
wonder if the range is going to be built into the ability, or if it's going to be built into the weapon. Like if you're using a dagger, if it's going to use the sword version because it needs to be hitting a certain range. Likewise, if you're using, I don't know, a longer pole arm or something, it's still only just going to end up using the sword.
I mean, speaking of that, I'm just looking at what we're looking at, the graphic that we're seeing, the video that we're seeing on screen, and it is kind of cool to have that uh, shape of the active skill cover your shield for the shield, whatever active skill that shield is. It's kind of cool that it literally goes over your shield. I mean, and you might have a round shield, and it's still gonna give you that other shield shape. Um, but still cool in any case. I liked that.
Yeah. So there seems. What do you think about the rotation? Well, actually, before we even get to sort of rotational stuff, what about movement?
There was a whole thing that you posted about the details of the movement, which did not bother me at all. I thought the movement looked great. My favorite one was probably for that leap that allowed Steven to leap over the creek there and up onto the rock in the distance. Um, I don't know if I've seen things like that, being able to go vertical. So I thought that was awesome and looked great. I was not, but I tend not to be distracted by any of the animations, even with all the flashy stuff. Um, that all seems fine to me. So I thought the movement was great, especially for alpha.
Neuro, I know you got stuff to talk about.
Yeah, the attacks definitely seemed along the lines of what a fighter would sort of do. And it's interesting that there's, like you were saying, the blood stuff kind of seems like that's their one of their sort of stacking element sort of things is, you know, wounds, bleeds, that sort of stuff. So that's kind of an interesting way to fit in and synergize with other classes. Likewise, you know, knockdowns and other sorts of things that they'd be able to probably do and exploit. So that's pretty cool. They're definitely designed to be front row, run in, hope your healers got your back and staying close by sort of thing. You know, definitely meant to kind of get into a group and cause a lot of chaos. Not necessarily, you know, take blows the same way as the tank, but still be able to take a lot of blows in a different way. So long as they're continuing to deal the damage, knock people down, they'll be continuing to heal themselves. So that's kind of a fun way to do it. It's like a not a vampire, but what, like a, was it Death Knights that did that sort of thing? Whichever, you know, in one instance or another in games that has definitely existed. I didn't think the armor was incorrect. It's anybody can wear whatever armor. I think that's the armor they wanted to feature this time, so that's the one they did. Or that's the
Yeah,
armor that they wanted to feature with Renkai, so that's how it kind of played out. So
I
that was
um
fine.
I really liked that they said, I believe it was Brutal Cleave, gives a bonus for prone opponents. So it doesn't necessarily knock them down, but it gives a bonus for ones that are already tripped, which again is a great synergy for, um, say, a ranger or a rogue that is tripped someone. That means that, you know, the Ren Kai might not have done the tripping, but if he sees that character on the ground, he can run over and use Cleave. That's the kind of synergies that I'm hoping uh, we'll be looking at in the game, that you can look over and see what your group mate did and be like, ah, I can take advantage of that.
The there's definitely a little bit more I'd like to know about, for example, their utilization of ranged attacks, and if there's going to be much focus on that for them, or if it's more of a I am my own projectile, I'm just going to go in and hit stuff sort of thing, and they don't necessarily use too much in the way of like long ranged weapons and using things to support them in that way. And I guess I would wonder if that changes with the secondary archetype or not. Not to say that, you know, they wouldn't still get good with some sort of ranged weapon, so that way they can still be good with a ranged weapon. But um, one of the other things that I guess was kind of nice to be revealed in the stream is seeing a little bit more of what a weapon tree is going to look like. That instead of just being two straight lines going up and they're just, you know, things that you can put points into as just a, you know, a default sort of thing until the actual design pass goes through on it. But instead we see these little groupings here and there of different sorts of things. And so that's that's definitely a little bit more promising to see. It gives more of an inkling of how somebody might want to specialize and invest their points and stuff to upgrade and utilize different things, different features of their weapon to support and enhance what they're doing. I don't know how much of that's going to be just giving abilities, or if some of them are also just going to be raw attributes. Is like, oh yeah, if you're using this kind of sword, you're just going to get +10 strength, for free, or some percent increase to your strength for free just because you're using a sword. So potentially that sort of stuff, as well as being able to trade off between things giving you more utility versus being able to spec into raw power.
Phantom, I'm curious about, do you think about the synergies of skills, of active skills with other players in the group? And I'm asking specifically because of heroic opportunities in EverQuest 2,
Yes.
which didn't work quite as well as I would have hoped. But this seems kind of like a more organic way to work with your group mates. What do you think in comparison? I mean, just what you know of the design in comparison to heroic opportunities.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about my love for EQ2 when it came out. I think it was by far the better game than WoW, but not as easy to play. And one of the reasons it was not as easy to play was things like, yeah, heroic opportunities. They weren't super intuitive. They encouraged group play. They encouraged you to know what your teammates were doing and work off each other in order to get the optimal outcome. But they were just sort of hard to understand. And, you would have a chain going one way and something flashing, and then skill bars were flashing, and it just didn't work really well. So the idea, yeah, it just, yeah. I mean, you imagine, I don't know if you've played EverQuest 2, but you have like 30 skills, 40 skills, and you have like 10 of them are flashing, and you got to, it was just confusing. Like, that's why nobody
I
ever
mean,
used it.
geez, it was 20 years ago. That's crazy.
I mean, it was a good idea. I mean, don't get me wrong.
I
I think it
know,
was a
but
great
I'm
idea.
saying 20
Uh,
years ago.
but
Jeez.
yeah, but I think I used it more solo because I knew solo, I knew what I wanted to do, either to heal or to get more damage as a cleric, Templar. Um, so yeah, this sort of setup of them actually using more visual cues and things like that, I think will be a lot more fun. Um, and our eyes are generally going to be on our target anyways, more so than somewhere else off in the corners of the screen. Like a heroic opportunity would have been like down in your
Mm.
bottom left corner or bottom right corner, and
Hmm.
so you're constantly having to eye track back and forth. So actually having something visual on a monster that you are trying to kill makes sense, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun to explore whenever that time comes. So
It is definitely interesting to look at the skill planner thing that was put together by Ash's Codex for the fighter. Um, Kind of fun to see the different sorts of things they were able to capture from the stream, and how it's all laid out, where the different paths are, where they start, where they can kind of feed into and branch off at, um, and stuff that looks like it still hasn't been fully integrated yet into the rest of it. So that's I can't remember if they said the three on the right were just their own independent ones, or if they were meant to be stuffed in somewhere else. But I'm sure all this stuff will continue to be reshaped and in flux. And if anybody wants to know what I am talking about, I'm going to put it in chat here.
so I'm curious. Now we've seen this sort of progression, right? We had the mage, we had the cleric, we had the ranger, the tank. They have the fighter. Do you feel like all of the classes are getting equal love?
Wow, because they keep changing, so it's hard to say, but I guess. Does it
I
feel to
have
you like they're not?
no idea what could actually be said about that because the ones that are taking longer to present may be more mechanically intricate and more love is actually being shown to them to make sure they're done right and cool and interesting that they started working on. And that's the thing. I don't know if they started working on all of the classes at the same time or they decided let's work on, the big three first, one form of the Trinity, whatever it's going to be, and then kind of start working outward from there. But for some reason, I don't think they waited till the last minute to start on like the Summoner or the Bard. I get the feeling that they've been working on them all the entire time, but some of them might have had things that were a lot more mechanically intensive, or that they were still waiting on features from the Unreal Engine to come through before they, settled on how they're going to design it. So, really hard to say on that.
I mean, I was able to play Ranger in the first PAX West. So they were working on Ranger back then. And I think we were supposed to see Rogue come up in APOC, but it wasn't ready. Or maybe it was Alpha 1. We were supposed to see Rogue in Alpha 1, I think. But it wasn't ready for some reason. So I think they're working on everything. Summoner and Bard are supposed to be the last two that we see because the concepts are challenging, is what Steven has said. But yeah, I think they were hoping to get Rogue out earlier. I don't know what's holding that up. And they were hoping to get Ranger out. Do we have still an actual skill? I'm trying to look at the skill list, and I don't think we see a skill called Rush anymore. That seems to have been changed. I wonder if that's now called Blitz. Maybe that's what it is now. Maybe Blitz is what used to be
The
called
the air dash
Rush.
one.
Blitz charged directly toward target enemy, dealing physical damage to the target on arrival,
Yeah, you
which
can
is
dash or you
different
can jump and
than
press it.
leap strike and maybe different than lunging assault. But I'm thinking maybe, yeah, maybe Blitz is what used to be called Rush, and then leap strike seems to be a variant of that, and lunging assault seemed to be a variant of that. But um, okay.
Kind of interesting to think about the fighters being one of the higher mobility classes, just so long as they've got something to target half the time. But that ability to close the gap on range targets and be able to chase people down with relative ease. I wonder if jumping and doing that dash will allow them to avoid traps, or if traps will still hit them, even if they're not stepping directly on top of them.
So Blitz, I think, would still get stuck by the trap, and then if you put a blink on that, that should allow you to bypass it. Leap strike should allow you to leap over. And then I'm not super sure about the details of lunging assault. Um, but the example that we used to have for augments was you could put a blink on rush, and that's the difference between you rushing directly overland to your target. You would be stopped by a wall or something like that. But if you have um, blink on there, you could blink past the wall. So I think you'd be able to blink past or leap strike over something. I'm not sure about lunging assault though. Hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's just overall interesting. Sorry, I'm in here. Is it gap closing? Is it movement? Like, is there a difference? Regardless, your character gets moved quite a bit during
Mhm.
combat. And then throw on top of that, there's quite a bit of self heal capability as well. Just looks like a super interesting thing to play.
Yeah.
I,
There was something on there that I thought was a little odd when they were fighting the boss. There's some mention about wound stacks reducing shield, and I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. Mechanically, should that actually be the way that it works, or should it not? Like, I understand popping it when you're right about to die, so that way you don't die. But at the same time, I could see something more where the bleeds and poisons and stuff like that are continuing to go on, while the shield is only getting anything outside of, like a force field around you, essentially, so that it would you would still be able to take the damage from the bleeds and the burning and this and that, and have somebody heal you while you've got the shield up that's only absorbing new attacks and new damage sources. That's something that I thought was a little bit interesting. Like, how's putting the shiny bubble on gonna do anything about that gaping wound across your chest? That's or how's it gonna get the sand out of your eyes? So that's I guess one thing about it that I thought was a little quirky, and I hadn't really thought about it much before because I've seen it in a lot of games and just didn't think about, like, oh yeah, it stops you from taking health damage, but I don't know, should it? Maybe that's something you have to spec into, is to help it protect you from your bleeds and burns and poisons and this and that that's going on, and that you have to make that a feature. But then at the same time, if you're topped off and those bleeds and stuff are still on, your shield's going to pop that much faster. Your cooldown isn't going to be ready for putting it back on, and you're still going to be in trouble. So, if you didn't get a chance to get away in that time, you're still going to be getting chewed up. That way, with no way out, at least the healer will be able to heal you while the curtain shield is up, and you'll be able to get the next one up potentially sooner. So that's kind of an odd thing. What do you guys think about that? Should the bubble just be a HP damage halt, or should it should damage over time effects still persist even when the shield's up?
good question. Should
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Well, I'm trying to think. Like, are we talking magic? Are we talking like a bleed? If you're talking about a bleed, if you have a
Yeah,
shield, then you should
like
technically
a
not be
bleed or a
bleeding.
poison.
Um,
Well, why would the shield keep you from bleeding?
well, I guess we're getting
If
into
it's
some
if
weeds
it's a
here.
bubble,
Did you
if
get the
it's a bubble
bleed?
that's going around you, then
So the
you
bleed
know,
came before the shield.
yes.
Yeah, then now I think you keep bleeding because the shield's an external thing. Same with poison, unless it includes a cleanse or some sort of other magical ability to heal a
Which
wound, something like
I
that.
hope they call them venoms and not poisons, because they're definitely not shoving mushrooms down your throat.
Hmm.
And what was
Yeah.
it? What was it called? I just forgot. The stacking bleed. Was it Rupture? Yeah, wound stacks. That's going to be a lot of fun to play with, because there's, they showed us some trees that will also, like affect how many you apply, how many things stack and damage and stuff. That's going to get to be a lot of fun to sort of play with. And yeah, Rupture also has talents to make it stronger. Yeah, that's going to be fun to play around with and kind of learn how what its strengths are, how to make it more powerful, what situations are its best, when or its best use. It would be a lot of fun. It makes me wonder, with these talent trees, how much back and forth specking there will be.
I'm smiling because I'm looking at combat momentum and wondering what the tank equivalent of that is, which makes me think about, they got to change the name of tank. That's such a stupid name, that we see often. And yeah, I'm wondering if they've added something like that to tank since the last time we've seen tank. Have they added something like that to cleric since the last time we saw cleric? So when you ask about, what kind of love each archetype is getting, I'm just wondering how much more has been added since the last time we saw any of them.
Good question.
Yeah, be interesting to know.
Interesting too that people tend not to want fighters. It's a high magic fantasy setting, so I'm not surprised that the melee classes might have mana. It's definitely interesting that the fighter has mana and also its own um, line, combat momentum that you'll be tracking as well.
Yeah, and I understand the reason for differentiation there is so that way you have abilities that are more your entries or your emergencies and stuff like that that you use for like some initial generation or ways to enhance it versus after you've gotten a few hits in, you can start doing some of your other abilities. I like that a lot more than I don't. Yeah, I can't remember. Was it the fighter in WoW that starts from 0 and you have to build up, or was that the rogue?
I can't
No,
remember.
Fighter's Rage.
Fighters. So then, that was one of the things that's a little funny is you have to get a few hits in before you can start using, some of your real abilities, and using mana as a sort of additional battery limiter sort of thing. It's useful. It's also nice for the kind of general ability for somebody who has a mana regen or mana restoration that affects people to be able to support fighters with that and not just be like, yo dog, you ain't got no mana, can't help. So that's a nice sort of thing that it still allows for some sorts of synergy, and likewise if there's some sort of a mana draining sort of attack that exists, then it allows them to maybe use some of their mana early on, knowing that they're going to have to generate the abilities along the way for a lot of the rest of the battle to go on.
What do you think about melee classes having mana?
Again, it's a high magic fantasy setting, so I'm not surprised. Everybody's using magic, and some of these abilities look like they would be magical versus just melee. So
Yeah.
Fair answer, because magic. Sorry, Nora, we were about to say something.
that is the answer.
Yeah, it'll kind of take a little bit of seeing and doing to understand why and how the skills are separated in different ways, and potentially if there's there's going to be a way, maybe not now, but through some other specialization to use more of your mana for like a replacement to your fighter power. But I guess another thing that I think about are weapon abilities on the mana bar. Because if weapon abilities are on the mana bar, then that makes sense. All weapons use mana, it's a generalized sort of thing. So even if you're mostly using your special currency for your class, you're still able to use the weapon and its abilities for other special attacks and utilities and such.
I'm thinking weapon abilities are not going to be on the on the hot bar, but
We'll see. I don't know if some of them are going to be have weapon can activate sort of things.
I think it's supposed to be through your combos, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Did
we
you
will.
Did you all see the number that Karen put in the chat as far as combination? Will be around 8,960 different spells and abilities when you include secondary augments, and that's not including racial, social, or religious augments.
Nice.
That's going to be a lot of fun playing around with, I can say.
Yeah.
Which is funny for me to say. Originally, I probably would have looked at that and thought, wow, that's balancing hell. But
It's
gonna be a
probably
fun
not
play.
as balancing hell as you think it is. If everything's set up in a way where each of the different things that you're adding and giving variants with are very open-ended in how they can support different types of builds and different types of ways to play, then people will potentially, with their second or even third character, finally home in on the exact set of things that they want and think are going to make them the most powerful. And it could be that one of the top tier alliances just has people kind of spread out into the different religions for their different specializations, and that's the way that they organize it.
Yeah.
What do you think? About 10 minutes left with the story. So the story quest we saw. Any
Oh,
thoughts
I
on that?
was so disappointed to see and hear about getting more than one of the mechanical toy soldier parts, that it just didn't make any sense. Like, only drop one of each for everybody. I'm sure you've got the tools to flag that and be able to be like, hey, if this person currently has one in their possession, then don't give them another one of the same. And likewise, if they already have one and they can't get it, don't show it, but show it to somebody else who can still access that corpse and see that, oh, hey, something I need is actually on it. That seems like a bit of a funny sort of thing. I would say the better way to handle it with just a little bit of adjustment to the writing is a set of mechanical toy soldiers. And so while you just need to reassemble one of them for the quest, there it would explain why you have duplicate pieces floating around. So it's like one way or the other. Either make it limited to one part per person, or don't limit it, but change the narrative that there's more than one of each part hanging around among the goblins. That's probably the thing that struck me the most about it. I thought it was kind of a fun and interesting way to present it. This was the area that was the dark smoke that emerged, or was it not?
I
This
think
was.
so. I think that's what he said.
So that's kind of a fun way. So that represents, okay, the tier has bumped up. Here's a new point of interest. You can go through and smash every last little tent and lamp and everything and just clear the land of them. Which I wonder if those are going to respawn, or if the more you break down their infrastructure, that's like starting to limit their area of influence and their respawn rate in the area. I would personally like to see mechanics like that, where they can build out and increase their radius and influence, or get kind of knocked in different ways and start losing control of those territories.
One of the things I liked was it seemed to be um, really a Kalar quest, meaning it was for the Kalar, I think. So it was nice to see the Renkai helping out the Kalar, and the Kalar seeming to be amenable to that.
Somebody posted, and this, I think I shared this in our Discord, and I can't get to it because if I go into our Discord, I will throw off this entire stream and everybody's cameras. But I'm trying to remember the exact quote. They're like, he's like, bro, really went and destroyed an entire goblin family to get a few kids' toys. It was like, or to get a kid's toy or something. It's like, wow,
Hmm.
I've never looked at it that way, and I don't know that I can
Yeah.
quit thinking of it that way.
Well, if you're
Hmm.
not allowed to
Hmm.
talk to them and there's no room for diplomacy or anything, that's still where I say the shortcomings of this game compared to actually playing Pathfinder. Because if I was playing Pathfinder in the world of Vera, I don't know that those goblins are just going to attack automatically, or if there could be some way to like communicate with them and like maybe do a quest for them, offer them some assistance, bring them a bag of bread or something like that in exchange for the pieces. You know,
Yes.
that's the one thing where there's still like, without a narrative option, you're still kind of forced into the role of the murder hobo.
Hmm. Yes.
So, well, we got about 5 minutes. The only other stuff I wanted to kind of talk about, one, and this was all over Discord this weekend. Lineker posted this onto the MMORPG Reddit subreddit, and apparently this is like the first live stream that has gotten really positive feedback from the Reddit fans in that subreddit, which is a good thing. The funny part, though, and I think Stephen even commented this about this in Discord, is that all of the negative comments, or most of them, were like, "Who is that dude that's playing? And can you get somebody that actually knows how to play the class, so that we know what's going on?" Uh,
Mm.
which seems to be a common theme. Enough that he's actually, I'm pretty sure he made a comment on Discord about it, that they might try to get someone who the person actually created it to put something out. So
I say screw that. Let him continue being the main, because it's not going to be very long before everyone and their mother that's got the Alpha 2 keys going to be streaming their combat stuff to the world. And so we're going to see top tier players doing their top tier thing and like finding all the little itty bitty things in the mechanics. And oh, yeah, if you do this, then chug a potion and it'll cancel. And so you can do it again real fast. Stuff like that. That'll be great to see. It'll be fun to see how people min max all of every last bit of frame data and every nuance of everything. Um, that'll be great. But and perfect focus and awareness to the situation, and people supporting them so that they can be as effective as possible. That'll be great to see. But let the players do that. But right now, just let Steven keep on driving. It's fine. He hasn't been dying as much, and he hasn't had to turn on the cheats as much. So, like, to me, that's a huge improvement. I'm glad to see him having the confidence to actually like, conduct gameplay with the character and relatively not die.
as much.
I mean, why did it matter? I thought it did a great job of doing what it was supposed to do, which was show us the abilities. Why does it matter how? I mean, I don't understand why it would have been better with someone who supposedly knows how
I
to
don't
play
know.
the class.
I enjoy it either way, but I am that odd person that enjoys watching a group of people just kill trash mobs for 20 minutes, especially when it's something like Ashes. So I just thought that was somewhat humorous, because that's more
Yeah.
that's kind of been what a lot of people have been saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, Darren says a doofus playing is more informative in some ways. That is true. Um, so,
Hmm.
well, anything, we got just a minute or two left. Anything you all wanted to chat about? There was a post about um, on Twitter today for Easter, showing an egg and some things in Ashes of Creation. You a fan of having Easter in an MMORPG? Yes, no?
I would prefer to have holidays more related to the lore, and if we're gonna do real world stuff, I would hope to include other stuff than just what we celebrate in the U.S.
For as fast as a year turns over in game, sure, do real world holidays, but do them on the in game schedule. Go right ahead. I think I'd like that a lot better, I think I'd like it even better if there's treated instead of there being like a something day in the game, that it's a something year. And they can be loosely themed after things, but definitely do a more inclusive. Don't just grab the Western this and that. Don't just grab the I will say as a funny sort of phrase, non-pagan stuff. But grab all the sorts of celebrations and things that people do all around the world. Like having a Diwali year where there's just bright colors everywhere. Hell yes. Sign me up. That sounds fantastic. I would probably play double time during that just to see all the colors and stuff.
Especially since we have Nakua, who are based on Polynesian culture. It would be great to see some Polynesian holidays and then weave that into the various religions. If you're going to have a pantheon of religions, I would love to see what holidays are celebrated.
It's
Um,
funny you say that because the guy who's working on some of the story stuff, you see, he worked on a game with a whole lot of lore from Hawaii and talked to like the real deal people, and it got the thumbs up and the okay from them. So yeah, like I expect Nakua are going to be, we talked about classes getting different love maybe, but I think they might low key get a whole hell of a lot of love because one of the story dudes happens to know a whole lot about the influence, the influences kind of going into their culture, and so yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to see how all that plays out, and I plan to play Nakua, so um, haven't had anybody we've seen change my thoughts on that. It's like, nope, pretty much Nakua the whole way through. Pyray's probably going to be my alt, and that's most likely what it's going to be for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're fun.
But I hope everybody's going to have really cool lore. And, it could be that we've seen so much with the Kalar so early on that they're just the boring, they're like vanilla. It's like, oh, you're going to play them? Whatever. All right. Have fun making like, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the town folk or something. Drinking ale all day. Yeah. Rock on.
mhm.
There's only one other thing I wanted to mention before we sign off for this week, and um, that is again the community that we have been a part of for the last 7 years has been really wonderful. It's been a really group of people, um, a lot of really close knit people. We chat almost daily and support each other, and I hope that continues. As we get to Alpha 2 and you get more bigger eyes on things, I hope we can all stay together. But I mentioned there was some sort of drama and stuff. One of those community members is Narc. I don't know if you watch him.
Oh,
I personally like him. I think he's a good person. I've got to know him probably more than most people have that comment on him. And he had put out a video about communication and concerns and stuff like that, and actually got quite a bit of a response because Asmon picked up on it and did a response, and then that sort of trickled everywhere. Um, and there's been a lot of harsh comments back and forth. And I just think everyone has different viewpoints. Everyone's coming from different places. You might not agree. Diggs and I have had I don't agree with him all the time. Um, but it started to lose a little bit of respectfulness, and I hate to see that. So um, I don't know where I'm going with that, but just that we all
I want to say though, one of the cool things that I experienced in Alpha 1 as someone who's not particularly a fan of PvP and had not experienced this before because usually I'm PvPing against people I don't know. Doing sieges when sieges is the form of PvP that I prefer, where I'm defending objectives. Sieges and probably caravans as well. It's funny because Phantom kind of needs to be paid in order to defend, but I just like defending, so I don't need a reward to defend. I just like defending because I'm the hero. But sieges in Alpha 1, one of the awesome byproducts was even when I'd see the enemy winning and I'd see, oh, Neror, I know him from the forums. I don't care that he just destroyed our castle. He won and I know him, and that's awesome. That was happening a lot, just seeing I might be losing, but it was just fun to see people that I know and have fun with on the forums were winning, and it was like, oh, that's cool. I don't mind losing to people that I um already have a fun relationship with via the forums. So yeah, I think the
So,
community is kind of cool.
you know, and at the end of the day, what got a little bit better? Communication. It actually did. That video prompted a little bit more interactions in Discord, and but of course I missed that anyways. You know, for those of you who weren't here in 2017, 2018, kind of pre-Peon, pre-Asman, Steven was in everything. Like he
Oh,
would, yeah, he would.
it's really pre-Margaret.
Well, it was
Almost.
pre-busy. Yeah, pre them getting busy. Um, you know, it was a lot of fun. He would show up in just everybody's Twitch. He would comment on stuff, and I get that he's busy. You know, they're trying to get an MMORPG out there, but so hopefully we'll continue to see that continue to grow here. So, well, all right. We are going to probably sign off for now. There is no one else currently streaming Ashes of Creation, but it does look like the Golden Feather is doing what are they playing? Sea of Thieves. So I'm going to actually push y'all that way. The Golden Feather is another great group.
You were playing Sea of Thieves earlier.
No, it was down at the time. So
Oh, okay.
I have a group of people I've been raiding with that I can't comment on publicly. So I'm restrained from talking everywhere. No, it was down. So, but everyone have a great week, and we will be back next Sunday. I don't think there's any reason we won't be. So, see ya.
See you then.